Well, hello everybody. Darren Saul, your host of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast, episode 101 with the lovely Divya Darling. How you doing, Div?
So good. So good to be here with you. I love being here.
My pleasure. Now, for everybody out there, Divya has been on the show before. We had a sensational one. So she's back today, and I'm very honored to chat about breaking through limiting loops and patterns. So for everybody who missed her first show, Divya Darling is a brain trainer at the Intrinsic Brilliance Institute. She's the co-creator of Your Success Code, the Inner Parenting Method, and lives to enlighten up our world. Neuroscientists agree that around 95% of our behaviors originate from the unconscious, which is developed during childhood. So if we're not thrilled with the results we're getting, this is where we need to be putting our attention. In this episode, Divya Darling discusses her inner parenting method, which creates long-lasting breakthroughs by rewiring childhood trauma. So welcome again, Div.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'm excited to be sharing on a topic that has been so life-changing, pivotal for me and those that we serve. Yeah.
Wow, absolutely. And I love, we're having a little chat before the show, and I just love talking about the unconscious mind, meditation, mindfulness, practice of rewiring neural pathways, etc., etc. So I'm really looking forward to having a chat about this. But maybe what's changed since last time we spoke? Anything new?
Frozen for me.
Oh, you're frozen there. Let me know if we're back. Are we back?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, a little glitch. I didn't know if it was my end or your end. Slight freeze.
Oh, good. So, Div, tell us a bit about what's changed since last time we spoke, and what are you up to at the moment?
Well, our two key things that have really changed, and one of the things is that how we spoke before about how we need to have useful structures in our mind to navigate our world successfully, right? We need to
definitely more and more than ever before.
Yeah, right. And if we don't have those, we're essentially up, S creek without a paddle. Like that's really what life is when we don't have useful structures. And everyone can relate to that because we've all been there.
Oh yeah, and the world is getting crazier and crazier. So we need the weapons and the methodology to be able to handle it.
Yeah, precisely. So one of the things that Deb and I, my co-director and I, started to see is there are things that we would work with someone on, and they'd have like a huge shift and in that moment, and then some things would loop back. They would come back again, and that's not normal for us, right? Well, what we're used to is there's someone has a shift on a deep level, and then they move forward, right, in life, and everything is different for them. Like this, we work as true second order change agents in that regard, and so what we noticed was they would we'd see the same pattern come back time and again, and they'd regress to this like childlike space, and so the kind of questions when we ask the questions, why does that person behave like, why can't they behave like an adult? Why does we've all had the experiences where we see ourselves behave really immaturely, and we're like, why did I just do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I say that, or why did I do that? And so it was observing those age regressions that over time that came to developing this inner parenting method, and it is something that I'll give you an example. One of what's taken effect for me from it, right? I did not know that because my mum showed love through food.
Yep.
That when there were moments that I felt kind of disconnected, lonely, what have you, I would go to eat. And I was never, because I am mindful and conscious about what I eat,
Yep.
it's never been a binge eating situation or anything like that. But I noticed that pattern that was like, oh, when I'm out of a relationship with someone, I eat more, is what I noticed. I was like, that's interesting. And then I found that association that was there. And these are all unconscious things, right? Because what happens in childhood is where we lay these neural networks that form our rule books and scripts for life, right? And if you've ever seen that image of the iceberg, where it's like this much is the conscious mind and the rest is unconscious.
Definitely.
Right? So I didn't realize how much I was using consciousness to, like, my conscious mind, willpower, to kind of, no, I won't eat that and all that. There was a high level of consciousness there, but unconscious, there was still this association that was there. And had I not done the inner parenting process, had I not used the tools in that program, I wouldn't. Right now I'm on day 7 of a water fast, day 7 of a 10-day water fast. I wouldn't have been able to accomplish a feat like that before. It would have been like, how am I ever going to do that? Like this sense of, it would have felt too big for me and beyond me.
So
right?
Tell us a bit, what's a water fast? What do you do in a water fast?
I only drink water.
For 7 days?
Well, I'm doing it for 10.
Oh my God. You're incredible.
But these types of things are, like, anything is available to us. Water fasting has so many benefits. Like, it's physical benefits, detoxification, emotional benefits, spiritual benefits. There's a lot of benefits that are there.
Wow.
I mean, if it's not done skillfully, there might be risks as well if people aren't listening to their bodies in the process. But for me, it was after having made that shift, it felt like an aligned course of action.
I like that.
And this is how we know when the work we've done has taken effect, as we see the change in the real world.
Yep.
And one of the things that informs our inner parenting methodology is this principle of correspondence: as within, so without.
Yep.
Right? This is a universal principle: as within, so without. So if there's
so without, I like that.
As above, so below; as within, so without. Universal principle, the principle of correspondence.
Yep.
So if we're seeing something show up in the external world, it's going to reflect something in the internal world.
Gotcha. Yep.
Right?
Love it. I love it. And so obviously you've done a lot of research, or lately you guys really been diving into, that unconscious time in childhood where these neural networks and pathways are laid. What age group are they? When are they laid exactly? What's the studies around that?
So basically what happens is, from the moment we're born, we're absorbing all kinds of information, right? And when we're about 5 years old, the brain does this big pruning, right? It's called a pruning. When we prune our neural networks, our synaptic connections, we kind of get rid of all the things that we don't think that we need. And when we start with doing personal development work, start on the personal growth journey, spiritual evolution journey, all of that, we start with recognizing our current triggers, right? Our current triggers, and we kind of learn to become non-reactive to what's there in the moment, right? So we start with, so in this moment, this person is I feel triggered around this person, and we notice these contexts and we clean that up.
Yep.
We've got a lot of processes in IBI that we teach in Your Success Code, our flagship brain training program. And we find we have more and more freedom and expansiveness in our day-to-day life, right? And so the more we clean, the further back it goes. And then we start accessing the stuff from childhood, where it's like we get to the deeper stuff. So we start with the more current stuff, and then we get to the really deep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, particularly if it's before the age of 3, we don't have memories for it, right? Because 3 is when our hippocampus, our memory center is actually formed, right? So before, it's not really common for people to have a whole lot of memories before the age of 3. I certainly don't. Some people I know do, but most people don't.
Yeah.
And so we don't recognize these associations we've made because they're like these unconscious rules that we have for life. Like, I'll give you another example of one that I had, that I recently found from my brother. That's okay. When as a child, so a lot of this our work layers with attachment styles and things like that. So when I was 6, it was too painful to think that my brother didn't love me when he called me names or you know, pushed me down the stairs
Teased
or
you or whatever. Yeah.
like did what big brothers do, right? Did what big brothers do, where they're
Yeah.
so the association was like, oh, that's how someone who loves you treats you.
Oh boy.
So is it any surprise that I found myself in a relationship where I had that experience
Wow.
of you know, emotional abuse in name calling? Like, is that any surprise where it was that on an unconscious level, that script was there,
Yep, that's incredible.
right? And it didn't. I'm off. I look back at that experience. I was fully, you know, I love this man dearly. I had a really loving, enriching experience because I take responsibility for my experience of life, and I didn't think there was anything amiss with that until I started looking at, I wonder what it is about me that like, how did I attract that? Right, when we get really curious about recognizing this principle, you know, as within, so without. So I'm like, I drew that in. Most people don't know that. Most people don't operate in the frame of like actually, well, I'll come back to that later when I talk about the parenting styles, when I talk about the different parenting styles. But most people would be quick to point the finger and blame and say, you did this to me. And
exactly.
And a lot of that is learned, and a lot of this is learned behavior, because the truth is, so with the law of correspondence, in order for us to know what truly is effective parenting, all we have to do is look in the external world and look at what creates maturation, right? So there's science behind, there's 4 different parenting styles, and only one of them is proven to support maturation. The other 3 stunt it.
Right, really? And maturation meaning just the healthy evolvement of a person.
Exactly, because the thing is, physical maturation, as long as you have enough food, you're going to grow to be like food, water, like you will grow to be a fully formed adult in terms of your physicality. But emotional maturation needs to be facilitated by a competent mentor, coach, parent, you know. So like, there has to be someone to facilitate emotional maturation. And so the degree to which our parents are competent is the degree to which we become competent. Right? And we've got stunted parents, which a lot of us really do, because they're operating from one of these 3 styles that stunt, which is only what they learned from their parents. Then that's no surprise that's what's going to happen for us. It's no surprise.
It's incredible. And when do they say, is there a time when those pathways, I suppose those pathways are never actually formed. You can always as we said, you can always rewire them. But at what point is that point where they get harder and harder to rewire? You know, from childhood? Is it a certain age where you're really set and it takes more work, or is it always going to be flexible?
Well, anything can be rewired, right? That's the beauty of neuroplasticity, is anything can be rewired. With this work, this inner parenting work, these younger parts, they need a competent adult to facilitate their maturation. So basically what it's like, if you want to use the metaphor, it's like there's a train going along and then a carriage gets derailed.
Right.
And the carriage gets derailed, that's a part that gets kind of stunted.
Yeah.
And anytime we have a trigger, any trigger, it will link back to one of these younger parts, right? And so we start with, oh, okay, that was me 2 years ago, or that was me like, and then we go down like all the way to, oh, okay, so this was the childhood self, these younger parts that were derailed, and they kind of just wait there.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the psyche matures and develops, but they don't come along for the ride. They need us to go back for them and kind of bring them along.
Yeah.
Right? To kind of hold space for them. So what we teach in the inner parenting process is how to be that one style of parent that is competent and knows how to support that maturation, so that part can mature. And as I said, the results of that is like, you know, I'm able to do a water fast. So all kinds of things are different in the world. We've got so many people in the program that speak of how they're relating with their business has changed, money has changed, their own parents has changed.
Yeah.
So we're doing this process.
That's fascinating. So it's really like saying, in layman's terms, that the right parenting style will allow your child to build the correct neural pathways, so you don't have to, so they don't run into trouble later on. When they do find the situation where the incorrect neural pathways might be set, they correct them, and so later on there's nothing to come back to.
Exactly. And then the byproduct of that is we can navigate through the world with so much more flow and ease.
How nice is that? I'm like Superman.
How nice is that, right?
Absolutely. Wow, I love that. And is this something new, or is this kind of study been around for a while on inner parenting?
No, this is, you're talking about the parenting, Diane Berman's research on parenting, that's been around for a little while. I can't remember the exact year that's been done. I want to say the 70s, but it's been around for a while.
Wow.
Yeah. So that research is there are these styles. So we've got our, and people can relate to this, right? So we've got our authoritarian parent, which is the parent that's like, I'm going to tell you what to do. Yep. And it's like one directional communication, and they have
my
really
way, you have under my roof. That's it.
You'll do what I say, and there's very little nurturing, right? And usually that will couple, there'll be like if there's in a parenting dynamic, there'll be an authoritarian parent and a permissive parent. The permissive parent is the one that's like, anything you want is fine, right?
Good cop, bad cop.
There's open communication, but it's, yeah. Right. And so this is that dynamic that they play out. One plays that, and both of these are stunting styles, right? Both of these styles, the permissive style where there are no boundaries, there's really high nurturing, but there, little expectations. Yeah. And so those two styles kind of magnetize toward each other. And then there's the style that is the kind of uninvolved parent, which is, they're basically absent, right? They're the neglectful parent, not around. Yeah. So there's, very little communication because they're not there, very little nurturing, very little the expectations aren't there because they're not present, right? So then there's that type of parent as well that's just like, do whatever you want kind of thing. And it's different from the permissive.
I'll see you next week. I'll see you tomorrow. Buy yourself a pizza. You're good.
You'll be right, right? So that child has to grow up really quickly because the parent doesn't know how to be a parent. And with the permissive parent, that child stays stunted because they get coddled to the point where, like, for example, in my previous relationship, I was a bonus mom,
Right.
and I like that term better than stepmom. And
yeah, I wasn't quite sure what that meant. A bonus mom. I like that.
I noticed the confusion. I don't really like the term stepmom. I was bonus mom, and he didn't know how to tie. I was bonus mom from the age of, he was 7 to 12, right? During that period. And at the age of 9, I was like, I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoelaces because nobody else has done that. And it's kind of an important skill to have because his mom would just do it for him.
Right.
And his dad would just buy like Velcro shoes so he didn't have to learn.
I like it.
And I'm like, this is an important skill to have.
Yep.
Like these are, so this is the hallmark of the parenting style that truly supports maturation is the authoritative parenting, which is really much more like coaching. It's really more like coaching. Coach, like you're a space holder in that. There's high nurturing, high expectations with clear goals, right? Clear goals and communication. And there is age appropriate communication. And there's boundaries. There's boundaries and discipline. There's a recognition of, it is my role to guide you. It is I take that responsibility. We're not peers here. Yep. You come to me for guidance. I guide. That's my job. And there's a way in which we can do it skillfully, where we support them in maturing by teaching them how to think for themselves. Yep. Which doesn't happen in a lot of the other parenting styles because there isn't that same support there, where you ask the questions so their own intelligence can emerge. So that's why from the other parenting styles, what emerges is people that are like, tell me what to do. I need to know what to do. Yeah. Whereas if we've had a competent, authoritative parent, as a result of this process, we can self-source answers. We can self-source wisdom. We know. I know what to do. I'll ask myself and I will guide myself skillfully.
Fascinating. I love that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
And so obviously this is a program that you guys have put together to teach parents how to be authoritative.
No, this is a program we've put together to teach anyone who is struggling through these loops and patterns in their life to recognize these are your stunted parts.
I see.
That have some scripts that you don't even know about. And so if you're having the same issue time and time again, money, you keep dating the same guy that doesn't, turn up in the way that you'd like, or these, any of these.
The same behaviors, we find out why.
Right? I always find myself broke, or
never have enough time, or whatever.
Never have enough time. Like all of the repeating patterns. Yep. To recognize there are some beliefs that your younger parts formed before you were even aware of it. Yep. And they're the ones running the show.
Gotcha.
And when you learn how to be that parent that they need, you can then re-educate them and transform them.
Love it. Love it. And so now I've heard the term inner child healing. What does that mean, and how is that different to inner parenting?
Yeah, so inner child healing is quite common when people recognize, I have these wounded parts, stunted parts, and the thing is, it focuses on the child, but it often comes from the approach of permissiveness. So it's like, they're there, you didn't get the your parents didn't love you the way that you wanted. Whereas this is not that at all. This is recognizing, let me re-educate you, and it's a skillful coaching way of noticing, well, uh, what had you been believing about love? Had you thought that it only comes in this particular form? Oh, if they don't buy me ice cream, they don't love me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you had believed. Oh, are there other ways that people can show love? And so this, like, learning how to have conversations with these younger parts in a way in which they can create new associations.
Gotcha. I think
They're the ones that need to create the new associations, right? Because what happens is, like, it might be like, I already know this stuff. I already know when, so not to eat certain things and whatever else, but then there's if a younger part gets activated, and that's what happens in trigger, right? When we're triggered, it's these younger parts that get activated, and they're the ones driving. Yes. So it's like a 5-year-old takes the wheel.
I like that. But it's to me, what's fascinating is that some people can go through a lot of their life with these crazy associations, and other people will say, what, that's insane. Where did you come up with that? And it's because of how they've been brought up. It's fascinating. And those pathways that have been set when they were younger. But it's just amazing how that drives their behavior and drives them into all these situations and the way they think and conduct themselves. And someone else might think, what the hell is that person doing? Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all these scripts from childhood. I have a friend who, the minute he finds out someone is a successful entrepreneur, his question is, so who was it, your mom or your dad, that didn't what was show you love? Because there's this sense of, I've got to perform and be better and achieve more. And
Fascinating. And so obviously people that, I mean, there'd be many, many different signs and characteristics of people that might be able to get benefit from inner parenting work. It's people that have repeating behaviors that are bringing them the results that they're not expecting. Or, as we mentioned, people that have always in the similar patterns, never have enough money, never have enough time, never always finding the wrong partners, never succeeding in whatever goal they set, or not following through on anything, or
dieting,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely.
Fascinating. And so tell us more about the program. How does it actually work? How long does it take? And how does the process actually work?
Yeah, so we kick off with an inner parenting workshop that's 5 hours, and that's where you have a taste of it. And it's an interactive workshop, and it's really engaging, and it's really profound. And that in and of itself is like, if you just come to that, you'll learn, you'll get huge value. And then for people who recognize this is really good stuff, then there's an invitation, join the program. And it's a 3-month program.
Yep.
And basically it's 3 webinars where we teach the content.
Yep.
And then 3 masterclasses, which are like Q&A coaching sessions.
Yep.
And so there's the webinar, then the masterclass, the webinar, and the masterclass, and they're spaced out fortnightly. And in between, there's learning activities, and we pair you with a learning buddy so that you can have someone to practice with and be doing the work.
Awesome. And do people in these programs have a connection to your community forever after that to help keep them on track? Or is there a point when they just kind of left to their own devices?
Well, no, that's one of the things I actually love about the way IBI programs work is for every program we do, we create a WhatsApp group.
Yep. And
that WhatsApp group stays active, right? So stays open. And so workshop, you come to the workshop and you'll get added to anything that we do.
Oh, fantastic. So you've always got people that are going to help fuel you in your journey, give you motivation, give you inspiration, people that you can talk to, bounce ideas off, ask questions, etc. So contact with the group.
Yeah. And so just recently, one of the people from our first workshop posted in the group saying, I'm noticing this. I'm having this issue, and she didn't choose to join the program, and still she receives support from the people in the group that did join the program and say, this is what I'm learning. And
Oh, fantastic.
yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with the program. I mean, have there been any absolutely incredible, remarkable results that you've seen? Maybe you can tell us a story or two.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really remarkable to witness someone as they parent this part, and the shifts in their face and their tone and their voice as that part matures.
Yeah. And probably also the way, what's the word, their posture and all that.
All of that. And to notice when something gets activated, how they kind of, all of that will regress to that age. Because the first question we ask is, how old do you feel right now?
Wow.
And then they find the age, and we teach the means for how do you go back to that space, and how do you be, because when you know how old you are, you know how to have age appropriate communication, right? We don't talk to a 4-year-old the same way we would talk to a 14-year-old.
That's right.
And so to be able to, as a parent, hold space for that child appropriately is so important. And I'm just thinking which story I want to share with you. I'm like, I mean, I do. I really do. I feel like sharing my own. Is that okay? I feel like sharing mine about when, like, I can tell you some of the other people's, but I'll start with mine. So when I realized that the part of me that guided attraction was the 12-year-old part, who, when she went into puberty, there wasn't really any guidance of, like, when I first got my period, I thought I was dying, right? Because nobody told me what it was. I had no awareness of what was happening. And in the household that I grew up in, girls weren't allowed to be friends with boys, and so so I didn't really have a whole lot of
a frame of reference,
support, right? So that part was stunted, and I worked out, it's that 12-year-old part that guides the attraction. So all of this discernment and wisdom, and I noticed this where I was like, I can see that this person is not at all a good fit, and yet I'm still attracted to them. And I'm a scientist, so I'm eternally curious. and so the mindfulness of noticing, there's attraction there. What is that about? And I recognized, okay, it was that 12-year-old part of me that was guiding the attraction. And so there's no wonder there wasn't the same degree of discernment, because what kind of discernment does a 12-year-old have?
That's right.
Right? Yeah. What kind of discernment? So it would only be a matter of time before I'd recognize that this person isn't able to meet me on, like, meet my adult self on the levels that I want to be met, right? It was only a matter of time. So that was,
and you never really thought about that before, like, you never, if there was this repeating pattern, you never really dived in there, or was there something?
I hadn't seen the pattern because I had a relationship that was 7 years. And basically what we do when we see something, like, we recognize, we get our scripts from childhood, and then we kind of say, I want that, or I don't want that. So we'll either we create the exact same thing, or we go the opposite way. Right? That's what we. And so it's that black and white thinking, which is a characteristic of childhood. These are some of the things that we rewire in the program. This black and white thinking that's there. And so for me, in my household, my experience was that then that it was, my dad was the one that was the boss. Like, there's one that's a boss, and there's one that gets bossed around. And I was like, I don't want to be bossed around. I'll be the boss.
Right.
I'll be the boss.
Right. I love it.
And so the partner that I was with for 7 years the dynamic was very much, I'm in charge, I'll tell you. Like, very much about, like, totally, like, I wore the pants in that relationship, but across the board. And that was because that was, I only knew that there was those two roles possible. The idea that you can have, like, other options didn't exist to me because that was the script that I had. I started my personal development journey towards maybe a year or two before we separated, maybe about a year or two before we separated. I can't remember exactly when now, but when we separated, so I chose him as a scientist would choose someone, where it's like, I have a checklist, you tick all the boxes, and yep, this works. And so there wasn't actually any attraction there. It didn't factor in at all. It wasn't, I didn't choose a partner based on attraction. I chose a partner like, this is a business relationship, and the businesses will be life partners, you know, and it was, you've got this skill set.
And I'm the CEO, and you're...
So there was no element of attraction there. And truth be told, in that relationship, I actually thought I was asexual because there wasn't the pheromonal chemistry, it wasn't there, right? So I was, you know, like it was very much like, okay, I'll do my duties every fortnight. Like,
oh
that
my
was
God.
my experience.
Oh my God.
That was my experience. And then when I left that relationship, and then I actually experienced attraction for the first time. It was,
whoa, where's this coming from?
Right?
Yeah.
I was with that partner for 5 years. So it wasn't until after we separated that the next person, I'm like, I can see a pattern here with the types of people that I'm attracted to.
And with your second partner, or that next partner, were you also the CEO? Were you also the boss?
No, that was the opposite. That was the opposite. That was, I must say, that was a conscious relationship in that I was using that space of, let's say, trigger. Because when you're attracted to someone, they'll trigger you. Like, that's part of the agreement that's there, right? Where there's a lot of attraction, there will be trigger. When it comes from that kind of attraction, there's different types of attraction, and I can talk about that in future podcasts.
I think that's a very good idea. We'll have to get you back to talk
feminine
about that.
dynamics, and how do we tap into polarity to create that. I can talk about that in future podcasts.
I think we'll have to do that.
Yeah. So that particular kind of attraction was basically, it's called trauma bonding, is what it's called.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it's called. Trauma bonding. It's like, the little girl in me feels safe with the little boy in you.
Right. And so you mean for that next relationship, you were more conscious of how you were normally behaving, and you said, I'm going to take a back foot here, and I'm not going to be a bossy. I'm not going to play that role.
Correct. So I just let myself, I let it be a completely different dynamic. And it was a beautiful partnering. And it was in these moments that his trauma was activated. He did not know how to handle himself. He's a beautiful, loving man. And when his trauma was activated, he would just spout out any kind of nonsense that I'm like, yeah. And that was, and I could recognize, like, this isn't, he's not in his right mind. So it never really, like, it didn't bother me that much.
It's an old script. This is an old pot.
This isn't him, right? He's not in his right mind. But it took 5 years and it didn't change. And I'm like, what has to happen for you to like actually start behaving like what keeps happening that this keeps getting activated, right? And so me leaving was basically saying, like, I've got some inner work to do. You've got some inner work to do. This is a dynamic that's co-created. I'm not saying it's all like, so you do your inner work and I'll do mine. And so through this process, the inner parenting program was born when I recognized there was another person that I was attracted to that had kind of similar characteristics. And I started to see these patterns, and Deb, my co-director, has been studying maturity, and she's a phenomenal model of conscious parenting. She's a story I can tell you about because when she became a parent, like in the real world a parent, she decided that she did not want to parent in any of the styles she'd seen. Right. She didn't have any models of conscious parenting around. So she actually deliberately tried to find models of who she wanted to parent like, and be really, really mindful of how she educated, taught, and held space for her daughter. And the result is, and I've been, part of her life since she was 13 years old. She's always been far ahead in terms of her consciousness. Right?
Oh, I was going to turn this down. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and so that's an example of, that's in the external world. She makes her own choices. Like at the age of 6, Deb was telling me a story about how she was wearing a necklace to school, and it wasn't allowed in as part of the uniform. And so she said, oh, there's a letter here. And so as part of this method is you give them the feedback. As a parent, you give them the feedback and you let them make their own choices. You hold space for them to make their own choices in a clean way. And so here's this letter saying, supposed to wear this necklace. What would you like to, how might you like to respond? And she said, I don't care. I'll wear it anyway. And so then Deb gives the feedback. Well, that if you do that, then the teachers could get angry with you, and they might, they might be upset. She gives like the possibilities of
allows them to make their own choice based on facts and
exactly wisdom. Leverage her experience. Leverage like this. Like I've been around the planet for a while, and this is exactly what we do with our younger parts. Where when I was holding space for my 12-year-old part to recognize, I understand that you're attracted to him, and that's not like. It's to be with her while she was maturing through that process is a very similar thing. Let me give you the feedback that you need that she didn't have, right? Because those parts stay stunted until they can't access the information we have until we share that with them.
The benefit of wisdom.
Correct. And when we share that with them, and even if it's like a 6-month-old, I remember one part was crying and crying and crying in a crib, thinking, I'm alone. Like they don't come when I call. And to remind, for in a child's eyes, a moment in time can feel like an eternity. Wow, so really, did they not come? How long was it? And so just to kind of re-educate these parts, it's phenomenally changing.
Wow.
Right? Phenomenally changing. And so with that example, with my 2 days of wearing her necklace to school, she decided on her own she wasn't going to wear it anymore because she didn't feel like it was fair to her friends for her to wear it, and they not to, because they're like, it was her own values of fairness.
Gotcha. Apologies. I think we've had a few internet glitches, but I think we're back now. Can you hear me and see me properly? Yep.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So what I'm loving as well is the fact that I suppose with wisdom comes a lot of these more gray areas Whereas when you're younger, it's black and white and it's just choice A or choice B. But with wisdom and experience, you can start to make a bit more of an informed decision around the gray, which is fascinating. That's very
That is
fascinating.
exactly what we teach in the inner parenting workshop. Exactly what we teach is when a binary choice is not a choice, right? So when we're in black and it's a hallmark of childish thinking. It's this or that. And as we give options, we teach how to offer options, we open up possibilities. And that is part of maturation.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
being able to hold complexity.
Yeah, and one person's gray area might not be gray for another. Or one person's gray area might be a positive gray area, or it might be a negative gray area for somebody else. So the grays are where the magic is, really. Yeah.
The gray is where the magic is. Learning how to, perceive our own grays.
Yeah. Wow. Divya, sensational. I mean, we could go on forever, but that was really, really interesting. And I love how honest you are in sharing your own story, because it allows people to really understand, what this stuff's about and how it works and how much benefit they can get out of these programs.
Yeah. Well, this is work that has enriched my life in more ways than I can possibly put into words. And I wish for every person on the planet that they also give themselves the gift of exploring their inner worlds, in this way, through whether it's through our, doesn't even have to be through our programs, but just that they give themselves the gift of exploring their inner worlds. That would.
Beautiful. And if people want to get in touch with you or get more information about the program, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, intrinsicbrilliance.com.au is the website for the Institute. And I have a website also, divyadarling.com. And there's a tab for our coaching programs, and it has the inner parenting program listed. I think the URL is /inner parenting program, but that's all of that's there on the website. There's so many resources, free meditations, free blogs, all kinds of resources on the IBI website. So I highly recommend checking that out.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely put all those links in the show notes, so people can really access those programs and get to know a bit more about what you guys do. And what would you like to leave us with today? Any little tips of gold from Divya that are going to help us on our journey?
Tips of gold. I guess I would say it's a process.
Yep.
It's a process, and it's a really important thing to remember. It's a process, and celebrate yourself.
Nice.
Wherever you are in your process.
In your journey. Yeah. Because it is a journey, as they say. Yeah. Well done. I love it. Well, Div, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I'm going to hold you to that. We're going to do another one all about attraction. And I'm sure everyone's going to be fascinated.
I didn't do that. Yep.
But for everybody out there, I hope you had a great session. I hope you've learned a lot, because I certainly have. And we'll definitely have Divya back at some point on the program. And have a fantastic day. And we'll see you very, very soon for another episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. Bye for now. See you, Div. Thank you.